Lapo Elkann was born in New York, but he comes from Italian corporate royalty. His grandfather was the famous Gianni Agnelli, who founded Fiat, and he himself worked for the family firm for some years. He's founded companies of his own, the most famous of which is Italia Independent, the clothing and fashion brand. I spoke to Mr. Elkann earlier this month in Paris at a conference designed to showcase the best of France's entrepreneurial successes. You took part in a session which was called "Is Paris Still the Centre of the World?", which I think is a title that could only happen at a French conference. What was your answer?
My answer was that out of an emotional, of a creative, and of an energetic perspective, Paris still has a lot to offer to the world. I think that France in the last 20 years in the luxury arena, they have done a very good job in creating conglomerates. In some areas like cinema, France is very protective and supports and helps its industry.
As someone doing business in both France and Italy, I mean, you have a significant amount of business in both those countries. Can you compare some of the challenges of doing business in the two countries? I mean, is it easier to do business in France than in Italy?
As strangely as people might think, and as strangely as it might seem what I say, Italy is easier.
Why?
Why? Because there's, at least from what I have seen, there's much less bureaucracy into building a company than there is in France. That is at least how I lived it. Then you have to also look at who I am and at the advantages I have as an individual in Italy. But the reality is that France is more complicated and is more complex to start something, I do think, than to start in Italy. That's for sure. That's my opinion.
What's your biggest problem doing business in France?
For the moment, I don't have to say that I have problems doing in France. I'm extremely delighted of how things are going for Italia Independent in France, but I obviously think that things could go better. As I said before, and as I always do say, I am never satisfied.
Do you worry about a death of the entrepreneurial spirit in Europe?
I absolutely don't. I think that cohesion in Europe is an element which needs to be thought about, not only in terms of politics, but also in terms of entrepreneurship. I think that we have our differences, but our differences can become our strengths. I do not believe in decline. I believe in decline if there is not unity and if there is not organization which delivers. Because words are fantastic, but they tend to be better in poems. And there needs to be also an eagerness in the European side to be as hungry and as thirsty of knowledge and novelty to bring to the market as much as most probably the Asians are or the Americans are.
How optimistic are you that Prime Minister Renzi will deliver the change that you and other business people in Italy need?
Entrepreneurs like to speak about everything and anything. I hate that. I like to speak about my job. I like to speak about my job, and in this case I make an exception because Renzi is the same generation as mine. As part of my generation and as part of being someone which is extremely energetic and someone wanting to bring change, my wish and my hope is for him to manage, and my wish and my hope is for him to have the feasibility and the opportunity to do so. Then being an entrepreneur is very hard, but whatever is underneath and whatever other structures that you need to go through, they are much easier than the ones in politics. I think that for Renzi, there's a level of gerontocracy, bureaucracy, and not wanting to move ahead, which is very difficult to tackle. Will it be easy? No. Is it simple? No. But I think that in a certain sense and way, if I look with all due respect to the French president and I look at Renzi, I say and feel extremely happy of who I have. The reality is, I think that we have someone who has the energy to make change, and the energy to make change for the country and not for himself, which probably was what was happening a few years ago. And it's time for people to think about the country, about Europe, and not about their interest or their friends' interest. And I think this has been going on for far too long in Italy.
Mr. Elkann, thank you very much indeed for talking to the FT today.
Thank you very much.